Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste everybody. We were talking about Belal Sen this morning, and we were saying how he attained moksha. But Belal Sen was not the only person in Sara Mahabharata who wanted to finish the war as soon as possible. There was another, and this person was a forest dweller known as Kirata Sen. This Kirata Sena was the king of a forest kingdom, and his son's name was Jara. And when he heard that the Kurukshetra war was going to be fought, and the entire Aryavarta was the kings of the kings and rulers of the entire Aryavarta were going to participate in the war, he wanted to participate in the war himself. Maybe for glory. So he came and went to Duryodhana. He told Duryodhana that his name was Kirata Sen, or Kirata Sena, as we call in Odia, vowel ending, Kirata Sena, and he said that he had 3 infallible arrows, and with those 3 infallible arrows he could win any army. He could win any army, be it the army of the gods, be it the army of the demons, or be it the army of the humans. So, if Duryodhana would make him the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava army, then he would surely give him victory within almost no time. All that he had to do was use those 3 infallible arrows. And he said that he would be able to defeat both Krishna and Arjuna, and of course the rest of the Pandavas and their army. Duryodhana was not impressed. He said, "You are a forest dweller. You have a wooden bow, and you have 3 miserable looking arrows, and you think that you would be able to defeat Krishna? You know who Krishna is? Krishna is incarnation of Narayana himself. He is invincible. No one can ever defeat Krishna. And you have the temerity to say that you will be able to defeat Krishna. I have no place for you in my army. Forget about being the commander-in-chief. I have no place for you in my army. You are only bragging, and you will not be able to achieve anything for me." But more importantly, he said, this is a war in which brothers are going to fight, and it's a war in which the kings and nobles and warriors of entire Aryavarta are going to fight. This is a war of people who belong to a higher civilization. You are a Banachara. You are a forest dweller. You are uncivilized. For somebody who does not belong to this higher civilization of ours has no place in a war in which we are fighting. You have no place. You don't belong to us. You don't relate to us. Therefore, you have no place. And inferior people, inferior in terms of culture, you may be a king, but you are a forest dweller. You belong to an inferior culture. So, belonging to an inferior culture, you cannot aspire to fight with us, along with us. So, you have no place. Then he said that there is another reason. We are fighting, we are brothers who are fighting. Why should an outsider be a party to our fighting? It is between me and my cousins, Pandava cousins. You are an outsider to the entire Kurukula. Since you are an outsider, we don't need you. Yes, sometimes the strategy says, sometimes war strategy says that even if somebody is an outsider, you can take the help of an outsider when with your own strength you cannot defeat an enemy. So, when you find that you cannot defeat an enemy on your resources, then you can take the help of an outsider. But why should I do it? There are great warriors who are going to fight for me, and I don't need the help of an outsider. So, leave. So, he left. Why he came to fight for Duryodhana is not very clear in Sarala Mahabharata. In fact, there is nothing like this Kiratasena episode in Vyasa's Mahabharata. It is Sarala's own addition to the story. Mahabharata grew. The story grew. And as the story grew, in different times, in different cultural backgrounds, the situations changed, characters changed. Krishna, from being an exceptional human being, equal to the gods or greater than the gods, became Vishnu. And so things happened. So as the story grew, characters changed, new characters came into the ambit of the story, new events came. So this happened. So Kiratasena episode is not there in Vyasa Mahabharata. So it enters the story in Sarala Mahabharata. The story of the Kurus, I mean. It enters the story of the Kurus in Sarala Mahabharata. So he said outsiders have no place, particularly outsiders who belong to an inferior culture. And then arrogant people who think too much of themselves and who brag about saying that they can achieve impossible things. These are not the kinds of people who would be honored by being accommodated in the Kaurava army. Forget about being the commander-in-chief. So, as I said, it was not very clear why he wanted to fight for Duryodhana. He had no enmity either with the Pandavas or with the Kauravas. He was not interested in the kingdom of Hastinapura. He had no, he was to gain nothing from the war. So, it is unclear why he wanted to fight in the war at all. It is possible, my own reading is that was the time when the so-called uncultured people or people belonging to inferior cultures wanted to be accepted as equals by people who belong to higher cultures and who belong to the higher cultures. And those Shabaras or those tribals, those forest dwellers, somehow accepted the fact that they belong to indeed an inferior culture, and people like the Pandavas and the Kauravas and people of Aryabharata, the urban people, the people of Janapathas, they actually belong to a higher culture. So, what they wanted was acceptance by them, and one form of acceptance would be to go and fight in a war alongside them, to be a part of a war in which they were fighting. That would be one. The other reason could be that a war is a place to show your skills, to show your bravery, to show your competence. So that is the place where you live or you die. You attain glory. So maybe he wanted glory. What Sarala says, but doesn't develop the idea, is the following. Sarala says he had an enmity with Krishna. He had no enmity either with the Kauravas or with the Pandavas, but he had an enmity with respect to Krishna. And that enmity actually began in their previous existence, when Krishna was Ram and he was Bali. Ram had killed him from behind a forest. Bali did not know that as he was fighting with Sugriva, there was Ram waiting behind a tree to shoot an arrow at him and kill him. So he had an enmity with Ram, and probably because of that enmity, he wanted to fight Krishna. But this is not an idea that at this point of time, this is not an idea at this stage of the story. This is not an idea that Sarala developed. He merely mentioned that he had an enmity with Krishna. So my inference is that this could be the reason. He later says that he was Bali and Krishna was Ram and the rest of it. But at that point of time he doesn't say. Therefore, putting things together, I think that enmity, the reason why he wanted to fight was this. But then when Duryodhana said no, what did he do? If it were only to fight Krishna, then he would have gone home. He didn't do that. He went to Yudhishthira and told Yudhishthira that, look, I want to fight for the Pandavas. I want to fight on behalf of the Pandavas and make me the commander-in-chief of the Pandava army, and I will bring you victory with these 3 arrows of mine. Yudhishthira laughed. He said, with these 3 arrows you will be able to fight Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Shalya and people like that, warriors of that stature. What are you saying? You are only bragging. And for people who brag, there is no place for them in the Pandava army. He said, no, I am not bragging. I am supported by gods. I am supported by divine powers. I am supported by divine powers, and it is through the support of the divine powers that my arrows are actually divine arrows. Whatever they might look quite ordinary, but then since I have the support of divine powers, these arrows are actually infallible arrows. With these 3 arrows, I can win Swarga, I can win Martya, and I can win Patala. All the worlds would be mine. All the worlds I will be able to win by using these arrows. Yudhishthira said, look, you are a forest dweller. You are not a relative of ours. You are not a friend of ours. We don't know you. And you come and say that I want to participate in a war between brothers. You have no place. Besides, it's a war of the civilized people. And in a war of the civilized people, people who belong to inferior cultures have no place. The same arguments which Duryodhana had used, virtually the same arguments Yudhishthira used against his participation in the war. So he said that outsiders have no place. He said the same thing. Yudhishthira said the same thing. And look, if we are unable to defeat, war strategy would say, in war planning it is allowed that when we think of winning a war, as a part of strategy, we might take an outsider's help, but then we don't need that outsider's help. We have enough strength we have enough capacity, we have enough strength. Our strength is enormous. Our potential is enormous. We will be able to achieve what we want to achieve. So, we don't want you. We will come to this episode. We will return to this episode a little later in a different connection. Duryodhana had used the same arguments when Jara came to Drona to become his disciple. By the way, the Ekalabya of Vyasa Mahabharata is the Jara of Sarala Mahabharata. So, Ekalabya story is Jara's story. Ekalabya story in Vyasa Mahabharata, the name of the Savara is Ekalabya. In Sarala Mahabharata, the name of the Savara is Jara. So, Duryodhana had said the same thing, that we do not want somebody who belongs to an inferior culture to receive education along with Pandavas and the Kauravas, who are princes and civilized people. So, the same argument. Now, both Yudhishthira and Duryodhana said that he had no place in their respective armies. So, he had nowhere to go. He was going disappointed. And he met Krishna on the way, and Krishna was with Arjuna. So, he told Krishna everything, that I came to fight for Duryodhana, but he didn't accept me. I came to fight for Pandavas, the Pandavas, they didn't accept me. All that they had to do was to make me the commander-in-chief, and I would have been able to give them victory with these 3 arrows of mine, which have the support of, which are actually divine arrows. I have the support of divine powers, and these are divine arrows. Krishna did not say anything. Unlike both Duryodhana and Yudhishthira, who were skeptical about his claims that he would be able to defeat everybody, Krishna was not skeptical. He thought it might be the case that his arrows have divine powers and he might be able to, to win the war fast. For whichever army he joined, he might be able to do that. So Krishna was not skeptical about the power of those arrows and the ability of Kiratasen or Kiratasena, the Savara king. So Krishna said to Arjuna that, look, he has been discarded by both parties, but suppose he goes back to Duryodhana again, and suppose this time Duryodhana changes his mind. See, the issue is this: for both Duryodhana and Yudhishthira, winning the war was less important than honoring traditional values. Winning the war is not so important, but not allowing cultural mix was important. So they would not, for anything, including victory in the war, they would not stoop down to a level when they use the powers of an outsider who belonged to an inferior culture. So it was a matter of cultural value. So that cultural value was important for both Yudhishthira and Duryodhana. Winning the war was not. But Krishna thought, who knows? Minds change. Suppose winning becomes important in the mind of Duryodhana. And he says, all right, you come and join my army as the commander-in-chief. So he puts his trust on him, and the Pandavas would lose. So when he said this to Arjuna, Arjuna said, Lord, you are our protector. So you do whatever you feel best. I have nothing to say. So you are the protector of the Pandavas. We depend on you. So Krishna told Kiratsen that, look, Kiratsen, will you give me something? Kiratsen said, yes, whatever you ask. So Krishna said, give me your head. he wanted to eliminate Kirat Sen from the situation in fear that if Kirata Sen went to Duryodhana, Duryodhana might take his help. So he said, look, give me your head. So Kirata Sen was thrilled. He said, I'll happily give my head to you. Take my head. Kill me with Sudarshan Chakra. Take my head. And then he said, I had come to fight against you. I had come to participate in this war because I wanted to be killed by you. So to be killed by you was my aspiration, was my purpose of fighting in this war. What is so important about being killed by Krishna? He said that, look, in the earlier incarnation, as I said a few minutes ago, he was Bali and Ram and Krishna was Ram. So Ram had killed him, but he did not get moksha at that time. Although Ram was Bhagavan, although Ram was an incarnation, he was not the complete incarnation. He killed him with an arrow. The complete incarnation is the incarnation who has Sudarshan Chakra. And if you look at the Dasavatar concept of poet Jayadev, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Nrisingha, Vamana, Parasuram, Ram, if you think Krishna, of course, he doesn't have Krishna as one of the avatars. He has Buddha and Kalki. Now, if you look at this, why did he not have Krishna? Because Krishna for Jayadev was not an avatar. He was the avatari, the one who incarnates himself. He was not the incarnation. He was the one who takes incarnation. But those who take Krishna as an incarnation, they call Krishna as Purna Avatar, the fullest manifestation of Narayana. And Narayana, in the framework of Sarla Mahabharata, moksha can be given by only one in the entire universe, and that is Narayana. No other god, no other super god or supreme god can give moksha to anybody. Only Narayana can. And if only Narayana can, then what is Narayana? Narayana is indistinguishable from Sudarshan Chakra. So only that avatar in which Narayana appears with Sudarshan Chakra, it is only that in that avatar, if he kills somebody with Sudarshan Chakra, only then that person would get moksha. So he said, I didn't get moksha when you killed me in that avatar. Now kill me, let me get moksha. This is an interesting concept about moksha. We will come to that. We saw in the Belalsan case, in the Belalsana case in the morning, we saw that when Belalsan died, he entered into Krishna. Krishna absorbed his Atma. Now, if Atma enters Paramatma, if Atma becomes one with Paramatma, then there is no birth, there is no rebirth. There is no rebirth. There is no rebirth. It is assimilated into Paramatma. Now, that is something that explicitly happens over there. And here, and he is also killed by Sudarshan Chakra, that we know. So moksha is connected with Sudarshan Chakra, with being killed by Sudarshan Chakra, and that itself is connected with Purna Avatar, and Purna Avatar is connected with the idea that Narayana is the only one who can grant moksha and no one else. So this is what happens to Kirat Sen. Now, Kirat Sen also wanted to see the war, like Belalsan. So what Krishna did to him, we will talk about that later. Because my purpose here is to tell you that Belalsan was not the only person who wanted to finish the war as soon as possible. And there is another person, that is Kirat Sen. And Kirata Sen wanted to be killed by Krishna. It was a deliberate attempt because he was one who remembered the past existence of him. and what he did not get in the past existence, he wanted in this existence. He was in search for moksha, and his dream was fulfilled. That is what he wanted. So that's what he wanted. That is why he happily offered himself to Krishna and to his Sudarshan Chakra. Now, interestingly, this idea of attaining moksha, to the best of my knowledge, this moksha is not a dominant idea in the Ramayana. In the Ramayana, there is no quest for moksha to the best of my knowledge. No one is looking for moksha. And also this idea of being reborn and all that, they are not sort of projected or focused in the Ramayana. But artha, kama and dharma, these three purusharthas have been recognized. But it is quite possible that in Mahabharata, the fourth, the moksha also became a part of purushartha. So, artha, kama, dharma and moksha. So, moksha became another, moksha was incorporated into purushartha. So, what is moksha? So, different thinkers might think differently, and we will consider this in some detail, in some detail later. What is moksha in Sarla Mahabharata? But you already have an idea that assimilation or being absorbed into Paramatma, that is Krishna, the Purna avatar, is a form of moksha. And similarly, being killed by Sudarshan Chakra is also a form of moksha. And look at what Sarala did. He had this myth-making imagination, like Vyasa had, like Valmiki had. They all created wonderful myths. Now, Sarala has the myth-making imagination in which he connects the Ramayana with the Mahabharata. And it is not just that he connects two stories. He connects one yuga, aeon, with another yuga, the yuga of Tretaya with the yuga of Dwapara, and he connects existences. We pass through many existences. One has many existences, and he remembers. He was fortunate to remember his. Unless you are spiritually evolved, you would not. You lose the memory with death. Death does not mean the end. Death is only, death is not the end. It is only a kind of gap between one existence and another existence. So, there is a chain of existences. It is only somebody who remembers, who is spiritually highly evolved, that he remembers the past, others do not. That is why in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Krishna told Arjuna that this is not the first time that you exist or I exist. We existed before. There was no time in which you did not exist. There was no time in which I did not exist. You do not remember your earlier existences. I do. So the same idea. So here he says that I was Bali. He remembered his past existence, and he said that you were Rama, but you are not Purna avatar. I did not get moksha. So that is why I came here. So my purpose is served. But then he also wanted to, as I said a minute ago, he wanted to witness the war. So what Krishna did to him, we will talk about on a different. We will talk about it a little later. Okay. Incidentally, I would like to add that I would like to add that Yudhishthir, as we know, in both Mahabharatas, whether it is both in Vyasa Mahabharata and Sarla Mahabharata, Yudhishthir is considered to be the embodiment of Dharma. He personified Dharma. He was Dharma. He practiced virtue unfailingly. Maybe there was an exception also. The exception was when he told a half truth to his Guru Drona. And in Sala Mahabharata, when he uttered that half truth to Drona under pressure from Krishna, what happened was his chariot, which did not touch the ground, so till then touched the ground, suggesting that he was also an ordinary human. But that lie also, anyway, we are not going to that. The lie also connected him with the world. He was an worldly person, but an exceptionally virtuous person. In any case, let's not go into those things. The point is that he was the embodiment of virtue, and he was a practitioner of dharma. But what would be the gain if you practice dharma? Why should you practice dharma? Why should you live a virtuous life? If you don't lead a virtuous life, there is a lot to gain. The Duryodhana and all were not people who did not have a notion of dharma, and it is not the case that Duryodhana was adharmika completely. That's not the case. But they did not follow dharma so steadfastly as Yudhishthira did. But what did they lose? They didn't lose much by not following dharma. If you don't follow dharma, then if you don't follow dharma, whatever is the loss, if you follow dharma, what is the gain? If you do not follow dharma, what is the loss? Now, if you follow dharma, ordinarily it is said that you attain heaven, you attain Swarga. If you follow a virtuous life, you attain Swarga. So, dharma, following dharma, leads you to Swarga, to a better existence, to a higher existence, but it does not save you from being reborn. You have practiced dharma, you live in Swarga, but then you return. Dharma does not lead you to moksha. That is a very important and dominant idea in Sala Mahabharata, that dharma does not lead you to moksha. We will talk about that. Now, then why did Yudhishthira want to follow dharma? Did he want to go to heaven? Did he want to go to Swarga without dying? That could be an ambition, that he wanted, that he was a strong follower of dharma because he wanted to go to Swarga without passing through death. Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, Draupadi, name, and Duryodhana, name anyone you like. All of them had to die. All of them had to pass through death. And they did not go to Swarga without passing through death. Yudhishthira is the only one who went to Swarga without passing through death. So maybe that was his ambition, that was what he wanted, that he wanted to go to heaven without having to experience death. But that is not the case. In Bhasa Mahabharata, maybe he wanted to go to heaven without passing through death. I don't know what interpretation is possible. But in Sala Mahabharata, clearly this is not the case. He did not want to avoid death. That was clearly not the case. When he went to the Himalayas, he told Draupadi, and Draupadi said that, look, I cannot walk. Why are we in the Himalayas? It is so cold. The wind is so it is ice cold. The wind is ice cold, and there is snow. Why should we suffer in this? Let us go back and go to places of pilgrimage. Let us take holy baths in holy rivers. Let us go to places. Let us go to temples and all. Let's go back and go on pilgrimage again. Why are we suffering here in the chilly, ice cold wind, icy wind, and extremely unfavorable terrain in the in the Himalayas. Why should we suffer? Let us go back and lead a virtuous life. Go on pilgrimage. Yudhishthira said, no. We have come here so that we can see Swarga from the top of the mountain. So his ambition was to see Swarga, and his ambition was to see the gods in Swarga. And much more importantly, he said, Krishna is not with us, so without Krishna our life is meaningless here. Why should we live in sin here? Krishna has left and he is in Swarga. We will stand on the top of the mountain and see the gods in heaven and see our Krishna in heaven. That is why he was going. It happened that he didn't have to die. He went to heaven without dying, but that was not the purpose at all. He simply wanted to have a darshan of Krishna and other gods in Swarga. You could see Swarga from the top of the mountain, and you see the gods and you see the dearest Krishna. That was the aspiration. He didn't want to escape death. That was not in his mind. But throughout Sarala Mahabharata, Yudhishthira had repeatedly said something, and that was this: that follow the path of dharma, my brothers. Why? And extremely important, powerful. There are just two words, and that suggest that show that really are pregnant with ideas and significance. He said, follow the path of dharma. Everything will go katha rahithiva. In Oriya, he said, katha rahithiva. Katha is one word, rahithiva is another word. Everything will go. We will go. Situations will change. Time will pass. We will not be there anymore. There will be new times, there will be new words, there will be new things. But the word will remain. And what is the word remaining? What is katha rahithiva? From mouth to mouth, across generations, across times, across generations, from mouth to mouth, the word would spread. To people belonging to succeeding generations, the word would spread that these are the people who followed the path of virtue. They did what they thought was according to dharma. So the word will remain. Permanence, he sought, if you really want to see it that way, if you want to look at it from the point of view of permanence, he wanted permanence only this way. He did not want to be amara. He did not want to go to heaven without dying. Nothing of this. The following the path of virtue is almost an end in itself. It is not a means to an end, namely to become amara or to go to heaven, to go to Swarga. Nothing of this kind. If you follow the path of virtue, that itself is important. And then he said, how do you acquire permanence? Permanence will come when the word would spread. So it would go from it would move from generation to generation to generation to generation. The word would remain. And it is not just Yudhishthira who said this. Sage Agastya also said this. He said to Pandu that, look Pandu, I know that you gave up your kingdom for Dhritarashtra willingly, because Dhritarashtra was unhappy that he being the elder was not the king, but you being the younger was the king. You knew this, that he was unhappy, and the moment you knew that he was unhappy, you gave up the kingdom, you abdicated for him. You abdicated the throne for him. I know this. And you did not live in Hastinapura, and you retired to the forest. And from the forest, you were trying to help the blind king. He said, I know all this. And he said that your nobility, your greatness is known, and all this will go. That is what he says. All this will go. But katha rahithiva. the word will remain, the story will continue, and the story will continue from generation to generation that this is what Pandu had done. So noble deeds, great deeds have a way of perpetuating themselves, and that is Amaratva. So that is Yudhishthir's message. Each time, there are many places, many times, Yudhishthir would say, follow the path of Dharma. We will not be there, but Katha Rahitiva. So that is it. So they didn't, he didn't look for moksha or anything. He said this is the way for permanence. No character in, no one among the Kurus, no one among the Kauravas, nor among the Pandavas wanted moksha. Duryodhana's son, will sort of, it's a kind of minor reference. Duryodhana's son was the one who told Krishna that my mother has taught me what to ask of you. When Krishna was returning from Hastinapura, after being insulted by Duryodhana, when he was returning from Hastinapura, empty-handed, without any assurance that the Pandavas would get anything, including a single village, he found that Duryodhana's son, Lakshmana Kumar, his eldest son, was running after him. So he stopped. He asked him, what do you want? He said, my mother has told me what I want. What did your mother tell you? My mother has told me, ask Krishna to kill you in the battlefield. So please kill me with your Sudarshan Chakra. I will get moksha. And Krishna blew his conch. But he did not die exactly the way he wanted to die. Krishna's blowing the conch is significant because that can be interpreted as his accepting his wish, his granting him that boon. But the way he died, it was not like that. Krishna did not kill him. He was not holding any weapon in the war. But about Krishna, who knows? In what form he killed, who knows? And that he did not give him moksha. But there is no explicit, nothing is explicit about the fact that he attained moksha, something that he wanted and something that Krishna seemed to promise him. That didn't happen. But as I said, we don't know. In what form Krishna came and gave him that moksha, we don't know. But in any case, so that is it. Now, we have been talking so far about, people who wanted something from Krishna, who wanted something from Purna Avatar God. We have been talking about that. Now, let us talk about somebody, a character in Vyasa Mahabharata, in Sarala Mahabharata, who is an interesting contrast to all this. You see, he is a character who did not want anything from God, but God wanted him. There are numerous incidents in our Puranic literature where bhaktas have sought the company of God. In Rama Avatar, there were sages who wanted Rama's companionship. And Rama said that was not possible in that life. He would give them that companionship when he is born as Krishna later, in Dwapar Yuga. And these sages were gopis, as the story goes. Now, gopis in Vaishnavite literature, at least in Odia Vaishnavite literature, gopis did not want moksha. They said, we do not want to cease to exist. We don't want that. We want companionship with Krishna. That is what we want. We don't want moksha. Moksha would end everything. Moksha would take you away from the cycle of birth and death. We don't want that. We want to be born again and again and again. So long as we get your companionship. So that is bhakti of one kind. The bhakta seeks God and wants to be in perpetuate company, wants to stay in the perpetuate, wants to stay permanently in the company of God. So that is one kind of bhakti. There are several other kinds of bhaktis, many kinds of bhaktis. One bhakti is Virodha bhakti. We will talk about that because Virodha bhakti is something that is celebrated in Mahabharata, at least in Sarala Mahabharata. So we will talk about that. But it is, in all these cases, it is the bhakta who has prayed to God for companionship, for this and that, for moksha, various other kinds of things. Like, and the best examples are the examples of these gopis. Gopis want nothing else but Krishna himself all the time with them. So that is one form of bhakti. Probably the perfect bhakti according to the according to the Vaishnavites. At least the Vaishnava literature in Oriya celebrates this kind of bhakti, gives it a very high place, and suggests that this bhakti or this kind of this companionship with Krishna is much more highly valued than moksha itself. So that is one point of view. And moksha, of course, people want moksha because bhaktas have sought for moksha as explicitly Kiratasena did. He wanted moksha because you don't want to pass through life and you don't want to be in the karmic cycle and move from birth to birth to birth to birth through deaths and deaths and deaths. You don't want that. You want to be free of that. You want to be free of the cycle of birth and death. So that is something which people have wanted. Bhaktas want moksha. But there is always something which humans wanted from God. What did God want from humans? There is one episode in Sarala Mahabharata. It is connected with the worship of Jagannath in Puri. This is this is a kind of story which this story does not exist in Mahabharata, in Vyasa Mahabharata. Much of this story Sarala took from Skanda Purana and Padma Purana. How the worship of Krishna by the Sabara and how the Sabaras were worshipping, how a Sabara was worshipping Nila Madhava. That's a long kind of story which I don't want to go into. Most of it has been taken from these two Puranas, but Sarala has added things of his own. And what he has added of his own is something like this. See, the name of the forest dweller involved in this story at this point of the story is Jara. Jara is a name that is given to many, sort of Sabaras in Sarala Mahabharata. So the one who went to Ekalavya and gave him Guru Dakshina was called Jara, not Ekalavya, that as I have already said. Kiratasen's son who went with Kiratasen and saw his father being beheaded, being killed with Sudarsana Chakra and attain moksha. He at least that is what Krishna granted him. He was also called Jara. The person who shot that arrow which wounded Krishna and which became the immediate cause of Krishna's passing away from the world, that person was also called Jara. We talked about that Jara yesterday. We talked about Jara some time back, where he and Arjuna were fighting, and he was the person who told Arjuna that, look, if I die, nothing happens. If you die, the world will lose somebody important. So he was the one who had shot that fatal arrow against at Krishna. And this person Jara, who is involved in Jagannath story at a later stage, he is also called Jara. So it seems that Jara was something like a name, it was a kind of common name which many forest dwellers bore. That's the impression that I get. Now, what did this Jara do? This Jara, to cut that long story short, Indradumna, the king Indradumna, was told in a dream that a huge log of wood would appear in the sea, you get that log of wood, and out of that log of wood, Jagannath, the Murti of Jagannath would be created. So anyway, to cut again that story short, they brought the log of wood, but from where they brought the log of wood, from there to the place, to the enclosure where the murtis would be built, the wood would not move. They tried their best. The Brahmins, the king's men, they tried their best. Nothing happened. The wood remained static. It would not move. And they said, "What do you do now? What do we do?" So the voice from the sky said that, "Ask Jara to come." So let Jara help in the lifting of the wood. So both the Brahmin and the tribal Sabara, the untouchable for who was untouchable for Duryodhana and Yudhishthira, they called him untouchable, Achala. So call this person, Jara, and let the Brahmin and Jara together lift the wood would move. That is what happened. Jara was nowhere. Jara did not want to participate in that. He didn't want to help anybody to move the wood. He had no idea. He didn't want it. Nothing. But God wanted it. That Jara has to participate in this. Otherwise, the wood would not move. So the wood moved. Out of that wood, the murtis will be created. Now, who are they? Narayana said that he would receive worship in Puri, in Kali Yuga. Then Shiva said, "If you are going there, so will I." Then Brahma said, "If both of you are going there, what do I do here? I will also go with you." So Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, all the three came. They came to, they came, so they said that they would all come and receive worship in Kali Yuga. But then, how would the murtis be built? How would they look like? How do you build the images? The murtis, how do you build the murtis? So the voice said that take the help of Jara. Jara said, what the king said to Jara, that go and make the murtis. Jara said, "How do I make a murti? I have never seen a murti. I have never even seen a picture. I don't know how God looks like. What kind of a murti shall I make? I don't know." But the king said, "This is what God wants. So you go." So he went into the enclosure. And then came someone, and this story, what happens now is not exactly the same as what happened in Padma Purana and in Skanda Purana, from where these story have been, most part of the story has been borrowed and assimilated into Jagannath story. I mean, the stories, the core story is there. Most of the story he has got from there, but then he has made modifications, and one modification is this. Now, who joins him? Brahma himself joins him. Brahma says, "I will make the murti, you be around." So Jara and Brahma together make the murtis. Jara, of course, probably he never did anything because he didn't know how to make murtis. So Brahma must have made the murtis. And when Jagannath, Balabhadra, Subhadra murtis were made, then Brahma assimilated himself into Subhadra. Why did Brahma take the form of a woman? That's a different story. So who Jagannath, Balabhadra and Subhadra are, there are many theories about this. There are many stories, there are many legends that deal with this. But one that is Sarala's is this, that Brahma assimilated himself into the murti of Subhadra. So Jagannath is Narayana, Balabhadra is Shiva, and Subhadra is Brahma. So that is how, that is what happened. And again, God said, Narayana said, the voice from the sky, Narayana said that he would receive worship, the Brahmins would worship, but Jara and his family, Jara would also be involved in his worship, otherwise he will not accept worship. So, till now the practice continues in where the descendants of Jara are called Daitas, and these Daitas perform the most intimate worship of Jagannath during Anusara time. We will not have time now to deal with all that Anusara ritual. Only this much, that on Jyeshtha Purnima, Jagannath, Balabhadra, Subhadra and Sudarshan have a bath outside, have a huge bath, have a bath, and after that they are supposed to fall ill, and for 15 days there is no darshan of them. Then on a particular day they give darshan. That is, and then a day after the Rath Yatra starts. So details did not concern us. The point is, during those 15 days, those who are considered to be the descendants of Jara, namely the Daitas, they have access to the deities, they can see the deities and no one else. There is one, there is a Brahmin who also has the same access, and apart from that Brahmin and these Daitas, no one has an access to them, not even the servitors of the temple of Lord Jagannath. Nobody has, except those people who are Daitas, except the Daitas and a particular, somebody from, and a Brahmin who belongs to, who also was connected with that worship, and a Brahmin, okay. And apart from them, no one has access. So this is how it continues. The worship continues, it is there. The point of this is, this is just a story, but the point of this is the following, that in Puranic literature, it is always the Bhakta who wanted something or the other from God, whether it is permanent companionship, whether it is moksha, whatever. But this is a unique example, to the best of my knowledge, in Puranic literature, where Bhagavan wants something from Bhakta. It's almost like if the Bhakta needs Bhagavan, Bhagavan also needs Bhakta. He looks for him. Jara will make my murti. Jara will, if Jara touches the wood would move. If Jara makes my murti will be made. If Jara, and Jara is the one who would worship me, and I will accept worship of Jara. So this is what happens. So this is important for me from this point of view, that this is where God wants man. When man does not, when Jara did not want him, Jara did not want any of these things. He didn't want to make a murti. He didn't want that the Lord accept worship from him. Nothing of this kind. It is the other way around. So it is the reverse of what the gopis wanted, what the bhaktas wanted. Here, God wanted Jara to Jara. So God wanted Jara. God wanted someone who was not even a bhakta, who was never looking for him, who didn't even, there was no aspiration of Jara with respect to God, but he wanted Jara. So it is important from another point of view, namely that the acceptance that the forest dwellers wanted from the people of the Janapadas, or the so-called uncivilized people belonging to an inferior culture, wanted acceptance from the Janapada dwellers, that kind of thing, by the civilized people. That happened here. It did not happen before. So thank you very much.